Have you ever noticed that sometimes the hardest person to ask for forgiveness is the one staring back at you in the mirror? Not because you don't understand what you did, not because you aren't sorry, but because there's a part of you that keeps whispering, if I were a better person, I never would have made that mistake in the first place. I think many of us carry that quiet belief. We convince ourselves that regret is proof of responsibility. So we keep holding on to it, hoping that if we suffer long enough, maybe we'll earn the right to move forward. But here's the question I want us to sit with today. What if punishing yourself forever isn't accountability? What if it's something else entirely? Psychologists have found that guilt can help us recognize when our actions don't align with our values. Shame, on the other hand, tells us that we are the problem rather than the behavior. That difference matters more than we often realize. Because when we confuse guilt with shame, we stop learning from our mistakes and start defining ourselves by them. If you've ever lost someone's trust, said words you wish you could take back, walked away when you should have stayed, or realized too late that your choices hurt someone you deeply loved, then this conversation is for you. Not because we're going to pretend those moments didn't matter. They did. And some things cannot be repaired in the way we wish they could. But what happens when you cannot fix what you broke? Is your life supposed to stop there? Or is there another way to carry responsibility without carrying lifelong self-hatred? Today, I want us to explore that question together because healing isn't about rewriting the past. It's about deciding who you're willing to become because of it. The difference between taking responsibility and living in self-punishment. I think this is one of the hardest distinctions we'll ever have to make because from the outside, those two things can look almost identical. Both involve regret. Both involve looking honestly at what happened. Both begin with the painful realization that our choices had consequences, but they lead us in completely different directions. Taking responsibility asks, what can I learn from this? Self-punishment asks, how long do I have to suffer before I'm allowed to believe I'm still worthy? Those are not the same question. Many of us grow up believing that the more pain we carry after making a mistake, the more sincere our apology must be. We quietly convince ourselves that if we ever stop feeling guilty, it must mean we didn't care enough. So we replay conversations in our minds. We imagine different endings. We revisit the moment over and over, hoping that somehow the next replay will change what already happened. But our minds don't work that way. Research on rumination suggests that repeatedly dwelling on painful experiences without moving toward problem solving often increases emotional distress instead of creating healing. The mind begins to confuse endless replay with meaningful reflection. Yet they're very different experiences. Reflection helps us grow. Rumination keeps us emotionally trapped. Real responsibility is active. It looks honestly at the damage. It apologizes when an apology is possible. It makes amends when amends can still be made. It changes patterns instead of simply feeling bad about them. It asks difficult questions about character, habits, and values. And sometimes it accepts the heartbreaking truth that not every consequence can be undone. That acceptance is incredibly difficult because there's a part of us that wants control. We want to believe that if we feel enough regret, somehow the past will soften. But regret isn't a time machine. It cannot rewrite yesterday. What it can do is shape tomorrow. I've learned that there comes a moment when carrying more shame stops honoring the people we've hurt. Instead, it begins to center all of our attention on ourselves. We become so consumed with proving that we're sorry that we forget the deeper purpose of accountability, which is becoming someone who causes less harm going forward. That doesn't mean giving yourself a free pass. It doesn't mean pretending the mistake wasn't serious. It means believing that responsibility is measured less by how long you suffer and more by how faithfully you choose to live differently from this point forward. Growth is rarely loud. Most of the time, it happens in ordinary decisions that nobody else sees. It's choosing honesty when hiding would be easier. It's slowing down before reacting. It's listening more carefully. It's noticing old patterns before they become new mistakes. Those quiet choices become evidence that your regret has become wisdom rather than a permanent identity. And maybe that's where forgiveness begins, not when the memory disappears and not when the consequences magically fade, but when you stop asking your pain to prove your goodness and start letting your actions do that instead. Because responsibility can change your future. Self-punishment only keeps you living inside your past. Why shame keeps you stuck, while healthy guilt helps you grow. There's a difference between saying, I made a mistake, and saying, I am a mistake. At first, those two sentences may seem separated by only a few words, but emotionally, they are worlds apart. I think many of us don't even realize when we've crossed that line. We begin by feeling genuine remorse over something we've done. That's a healthy response. It tells us our actions didn't match the kind of person we want to be. In many ways, guilt can act like a compass. It points us back toward our values. It reminds us that our choices matter because people matter. But shame doesn't stop at the behavior. Shame quietly rewrites the story. It says the problem isn't what you did. The problem is who you are. And once you believe that story, change starts to feel impossible. After all, if you're fundamentally broken, what exactly are you trying to improve? Psychological research has consistently found that guilt is more likely to motivate repair, accountability, and positive change, while shame often leads people to hide, withdraw, deny responsibility, or become defensive. That makes sense when you think about it. If you believe you're beyond redemption, admitting another mistake feels dangerous. Your energy goes toward protecting yourself instead of growing. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. Someone brings up something you regret, and before they've even finished speaking, your mind starts building a case against you. You remember every failure you've ever had, every moment you fell short, every relationship that didn't survive. Suddenly, one mistake becomes evidence for a lifelong verdict. But our minds aren't always reliable storytellers. They often gather the evidence that supports the story we've already decided to believe. If that story is I'm not enough, then every regret becomes another exhibit in the trial against yourself. The challenge is learning to interrupt that pattern with honesty instead of condemnation. Honesty says, yes, I caused pain. It doesn't minimize the impact or make excuses, but it also leaves room for another truth. People are capable of learning. They are capable of changing. They are capable of becoming more thoughtful, more patient, more compassionate than they were before. That doesn't erase the consequences of the past. Some consequences remain, and acknowledging them is part of maturity. But consequences and identity are not the same thing. One describes what happened. The other describes who you believe you are. Confusing those two can keep you trapped for years. I've come to believe that real courage isn't found in pretending we've never failed. It's found in looking directly at our failures without allowing them to become the only thing we see. We can hold deep regret and deep hope at the same time. Those two emotions don't cancel each other out. In fact, they often grow together. When you begin separating your worth from your worst moment, something remarkable happens. You become more willing to face the truth because the truth no longer threatens your entire identity. You can apologize without collapsing. You can accept feedback without believing you're beyond repair. You can let your mistakes become teachers instead of permanent labels. And that's when healing starts to move, not because the past has changed, but because you've stopped allowing shame to write the ending of your story. Accepting that some things cannot be fixed, yet life can still move forward. I think this may be one of the most painful truths we'll ever face. Not every apology will be accepted. Not every relationship will be restored, and not every broken piece can be put back exactly as it was. We don't like that reality because we naturally want resolution. We want the chance to make things right. We want to believe that if our regret is deep enough and our intentions are sincere enough, we'll eventually get another opportunity to repair what was damaged. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. That's the part no one prepares us for. There are moments in life when the consequences of our choices continue long after we've changed. A friendship may never recover. A person we hurt may decide they need distance. An opportunity may never come back. There may be words we can never take back because they landed in someone's heart at exactly the wrong moment. Accepting that reality doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of the illusion that healing always looks like restoration. Sometimes healing looks like reconciliation. Other times it looks like learning to live with unanswered questions and unfinished stories. Our minds struggle with unfinished stories. Psychologists have long observed that people are drawn toward closure. We replay conversations, imagine different outcomes, and search for the one sentence we wish we had said. It's our brain's way of trying to solve a problem that may no longer have a solution. The challenge is that some chapters don't close because we found the perfect ending. They close because we decide to stop rewriting them in our imagination. That doesn't happen all at once. Acceptance isn't a switch you flip one morning. It's something you practice often in very ordinary moments. It's the quiet decision to stop checking whether someone has forgiven you. It's choosing not to measure your worth by whether another person invites you back into their life. It's allowing yourself to acknowledge, I wish this had ended differently, without allowing that sentence to become, my life can never be meaningful again. One of the most freeing realizations is that you can deeply respect another person's boundaries while still believing you have the capacity to become a better person. If someone cannot trust you again, that may be their healthiest decision. Their choice deserves respect, but their inability to welcome you back does not mean you are forbidden from growing. There is humility in accepting consequences without demanding that life erase them. There is maturity in recognizing that forgiveness from others is a gift, not something we can earn by suffering long enough. And there is quiet strength in continuing to become someone of integrity, even when no one is watching, and even when no one is applauding your effort. The truth is, moving forward doesn't require forgetting what happened. It requires carrying it differently. Instead of dragging it behind you like a chain, you begin carrying it as a reminder of the values you refuse to abandon again. The memory remains, but it no longer controls every decision, every relationship, or every belief about yourself. You may never get the ending you hoped for. You may never hear the words, I forgive you. You may never have the chance to explain everything you wish someone understood. And yet life can still hold purpose. It can still hold connection, kindness, and meaningful change. The past may always be part of your story, but it doesn't have to be the chapter that keeps you from writing the rest of it. Learning to grieve the person you used to be without staying there forever. There is a kind of grief we don't talk about very often. It isn't the grief that comes from losing another person. It's the grief of looking back at an earlier version of yourself and realizing that someone was hurt because of the choices you made. That realization can feel incredibly heavy because you can't go back and become the person you wish you had been in that moment. Time doesn't offer that kind of bargain. When we hear the word grief, we usually think about death or major loss. But grief also shows up whenever we let go of an old identity, an old belief, or an old story about ourselves. If you've changed in meaningful ways, you've probably had to mourn the person you were before you knew better. That's a quiet kind of sadness, but it's real. The temptation is to keep punishing that former version of yourself. We replay old conversations and wonder how we could have been so impatient, so afraid, so distracted, or so unaware. We judge yesterday's decisions using today's understanding. The problem is that growth almost always works in reverse. We learn because we failed, not before. We gain wisdom because life exposed our blind spots, not because we never had any. That doesn't excuse harmful choices. Regret has an important place. It reminds us that our actions have weight, but regret becomes unhealthy when it refuses to acknowledge that people are capable of change. If every mistake permanently defines you, then growth becomes little more than an illusion. Many therapists talk about the importance of self-reflection without self-condemnation. That balance matters. Honest reflection asks, what was happening inside me that led to those choices? Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was insecurity. Maybe it was emotional exhaustion or a desperate need for approval. Understanding those deeper patterns doesn't erase responsibility. It simply gives you something real to work on instead of leaving you trapped in endless self-criticism. I found that healing often begins when we stop trying to erase the person we used to be and start trying to understand them. That earlier version of you may have lacked maturity, emotional tools, or the courage you have today. They made decisions that caused pain, and those decisions had consequences. Both of those things can be true, but they also became the reason you learned lessons you might never have learned any other way. There is a quiet courage in looking back without turning away, in saying, I don't like everything I see there, but I'm willing to learn from it. That's very different from building a permanent home in your regrets. One posture opens the door to transformation, the other locks it. Think about how you would respond to someone you love who came to you carrying this same burden. You probably wouldn't tell them they deserve to spend the rest of their life defined by their worst moment. You would encourage them to take responsibility, make changes where they could, and keep becoming the person they hope to be. The challenge is extending that same honesty and humanity to yourself. Grieving who you used to be is not the same as wanting to become that person again. It is simply acknowledging that a chapter has ended. You don't have to celebrate that version of yourself, but you don't have to keep fighting with them either. Their story has already been written, yours is still unfolding. And perhaps one of the most meaningful signs of growth is this. You no longer recognize yourself in those old patterns, yet you remember them well enough to choose a different path every single day. That's not forgetting the past. That's allowing it to become a foundation for a wiser future rather than a prison you can never leave. How self-compassion creates the courage to change rather than repeat the past. When people hear the phrase self-compassion, they sometimes imagine it's about letting yourself off the hook. They worry that if they're too kind to themselves, they'll stop caring about growth or accountability. But the research tells a different story. Studies on self-compassion have consistently shown that treating ourselves with understanding after failure is associated with greater resilience, a stronger willingness to learn from mistakes, and a greater motivation to make positive changes. In other words, compassion doesn't weaken responsibility, it strengthens it. Think about the moments in your own life when you've learned the most. Was it because someone shamed you into becoming a better person? Or was it because someone believed you were capable of more, even while acknowledging where you had fallen short? Most of us grow in environments where honesty and hope exist together. The same is true in our relationship with ourselves. If every time you remember your past, your inner voice responds with insults, condemnation, or hopelessness, eventually you'll stop looking honestly at your life, not because you don't care, but because the emotional cost becomes too high. We naturally avoid places where we expect to be attacked, even if the attack is coming from our own thoughts. Self-compassion changes that conversation. It sounds more like this. Yes, I regret what happened. Yes, I wish I had made a different choice. And yes, I am still responsible for becoming someone who lives differently. Notice that none of those statements deny the truth. They simply refuse to believe that failure is the end of the story. Real change doesn't come from proving you're worthless. It comes from believing your values are worth living up to. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Instead of waking up each day trying to outrun your past, you begin waking up with a quiet commitment to practice who you want to become. You become more patient because you understand the damage impatience can cause. You become more honest because you've seen what hiding the truth can cost. You become more attentive because you've learned what happens when people feel unseen. The very places where you once stumbled become the places where you choose to walk with greater intention. Growth isn't measured by never remembering your mistakes. It's measured by what those memories inspire you to do today. There will still be days when regret returns without warning. A familiar place, an old photograph, a song, or even an ordinary conversation may bring everything rushing back. That doesn't mean you failed to heal. Healing isn't the absence of painful memories. It's the presence of a new response when those memories arrive. Instead of saying, this proves I'll never change, you begin saying, this reminds me why I choose differently now. That is a profound difference. Over time, your identity becomes rooted less in the worst thing you've done and more in the countless small decisions you've made since then. The kindness you've shown, the honesty you've practiced, the boundaries you've respected, the apologies you've offered, the patience you've learned. Those choices don't erase the past, but they reveal the person you are becoming. And perhaps that's what forgiving yourself has always been about, not pretending that nothing was broken, not demanding that every consequence disappear, not waiting until you feel perfectly at peace, but choosing again and again to let your deepest regrets become the soil where your strongest character grows. The past will always be one chapter of your story. It does not have to be the final one. Every new day gives you another opportunity to live in a way that reflects the person you are choosing to become. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is believing that while you cannot rewrite yesterday, you can still write tomorrow with honesty, compassion, and hope. As you leave today, I hope you carry one simple truth with you. Your worst mistake may have shaped part of your story, but it never earned the right to define your entire life. You cannot change what happened, but you can choose who you become because of it. Every act of honesty, every moment of courage, every decision to respond with greater compassion is another step toward the person you were always capable of becoming. So be patient with yourself. Keep showing up. Keep learning. Keep choosing growth over shame, hope over fear, and compassion over condemnation. The road ahead may not erase the past, but it can become something even more meaningful. A life built on wisdom instead of regret. I believe you're more than the worst thing you've ever done, and your next chapter is still waiting to be written. Thank you for spending this time with me. I wish you strength for the hard days, grace for the moments when you stumble, and the courage to keep moving forward.